What if I told you that some of the most famous stories from history, the ones repeated in classrooms, in books, and even in movies, never really happened at all? Tonight, let us drift gently through time, not to relive the battles or the triumphs, but to uncover the myths, those whispered tales that captured imaginations, even if they strayed far from truth. Close your eyes, relax your breathing, and let history wrap you in its quiet embrace as we explore famous historical events that never actually happened. It is said that Albert Einstein, the genius of relativity, once failed mathematics in school. The story has been told by hopeful students, perhaps to comfort themselves, that even the greatest mind of the 20th century once stumbled. But the truth is calmer and quite different. Einstein did not fail at mathematics. By the time he was 12 years old, he was already teaching himself algebra and geometry, solving problems far beyond his peers. By 15, calculus was well within his grasp. The confusion likely arose from the Swiss school grading system, where a 1 was poor and a 6 was excellent, the opposite of most European systems. Somewhere in translation, the myth was born. Later in life, Einstein himself laughed at the idea, saying softly, "I never failed mathematics. Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral calculus." So as you rest tonight, let go of the myth of Einstein, the failing student. In truth, his brilliance shone brightly from the very start. Another story often told to children is that Christopher Columbus bravely set out to prove the earth was round, when many thought it was flat. Yet this, too, is only a story. For centuries before Columbus, people already knew the earth was round. Ancient Greek philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle had reasoned it long before. The mathematician Eratosthenes had even measured the Earth's circumference with impressive accuracy in the 3rd century BCE. What Columbus truly believed was not that the Earth was flat, but that the ocean was far smaller than it really was. He thought Asia lay just across the Atlantic. He was, of course, mistaken, and in that mistake, he stumbled upon lands that would forever change history. So Columbus did not prove the Earth's shape. Instead, he revealed just how easy it is for myths to outlast facts. Now let us travel to a young United States, eager for heroes. One tale told is of little George Washington, who supposedly chopped down his father's cherry tree, and when confronted, bravely declared, "I cannot tell a lie. I did cut it." It is a charming fable, but only a fable. The story first appeared in a book by Mason Locke Weems, published after Washington's death. Earlier editions of the book never mentioned it. It was not history, but rather a moral lesson to create an image of Washington as a paragon of honesty. A story designed not to recount truth, but to inspire virtue in a young nation. As you rest, imagine Washington not as the boy with the axe, but as the man who bore the weight of revolution, who crossed rivers in the cold, and who became the first president of a fragile new country. The cherry tree was never real, but the leader was. In the autumn of 1871, flames consumed Chicago. More than 300 lives were lost, and tens of thousands were left homeless. The story most often told is that it began with Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicking over a lantern in a barn. Yet history tells us differently. The tale of the cow was invented by a newspaper reporter seeking to capture attention. Mrs. O'Leary was an Irish immigrant woman, poor, Catholic, and easy for society to blame. Later, the reporter admitted he had made the detail up. Still, the story spread like fire itself. The true cause of the fire has never been confirmed. Some suggest careless boys smoking near the barn. Others imagine the spark of a meteor shower. But one thing is clear, the cow was innocent. Picture Isaac Newton sitting beneath a tree. An apple falls. striking him upon the head, and in that instant, gravity is discovered. This is the story we are told simple, tidy, and satisfying. But reality is quieter. Newton himself recalled late in life that he once saw an apple fall in his garden. The sight led him to wonder why objects fall straight to the earth and not sideways or upward. It was not a sudden revelation, but the beginning of long reflection. Years of thought and calculation would follow, leading finally to the Principia Mathematica. So the apple did fall, but no apple ever struck Newton's head. Knowledge came not from a bump, but from patient curiosity. Now let us drift back to Rome in the year 64 CE. Flames consume much of the city, and in the minds of many, Emperor Nero is seen fiddling while his capital burns. But the image is only symbolic. The violin had not yet been invented, and Nero was likely not even in Rome when the fire began. Ancient historians tell us he hurried back to the city, opening his gardens to refugees and arranging supplies for the homeless. Yet Nero was eccentric, a performer, a singer, a man who loved the stage. Later writers painted him as the embodiment of excess. The myth of Nero fiddling matched the idea of a decadent ruler more than the reality. And so the myth endures, a story of fire, of music, and of a city in ashes. When bread grew scarce in France, it is said that Queen Marie Antoinette, upon hearing of the peasants' suffering, remarked, "Let them eat cake." It is a phrase that lingers in the imagination, a picture of royal arrogance. But Marie almost certainly never said it. The phrase was written years earlier by the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, long before Marie even arrived in France. Still, the story clung to her, for she lived a life of luxury while her country struggled with debt and hunger. To the people, she became a symbol of a disconnected elite. History shows, however, that Marie also gave to charity, supported hospitals, and cared deeply for her children. Yet none of that mattered when revolution came. The myth was stronger than the truth. On an October night in 1938, radio listeners heard alarming news bulletins. Reports of strange objects landing in New Jersey, of gas and fire and destruction. It was Orson Welles' adaptation of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. Legend says that panic spread across America, that people ran into the streets, fleeing an imagined invasion from Mars. But in reality, the broadcast reached only a small audience. Most listened calmly or tuned to other stations. The myth of nationwide panic was spread by newspapers eager to portray radio as reckless and dangerous. And so, once again, the story outgrew the truth. A night of fiction became a myth of hysteria. Each year, December 25 is celebrated as the birth of Jesus. Yet the Bible gives no date, no month, not even a season. Some scholars point out that shepherds tending their flocks at night, as described in the Gospel of Luke, would not likely have been in the fields in the cold of December. Different traditions once celebrated in January, in March, even in September. The choice of December 25 came later, perhaps to align with ancient Roman festivals, Saturnalia, and the Feast of the Sun. The date is symbolic, not historical. Yet for many, its meaning rests not in accuracy, but in tradition, warmth, and light during the dark of winter. The Salem witch trials remain one of the darkest chapters in early American history. We imagine women tied to stakes, surrounded by flames. But this image, too, is not true of Salem. 19 victims were hanged, and one man was pressed to death beneath stones. No one was burned. Burning was a punishment used in Europe, but not in colonial Massachusetts. Over time, tales of European witch burnings mixed with the story of Salem. Later generations in popular culture filled in the flames that never were. The truth is grim enough. Fear and suspicion destroyed lives, even without fire. The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere is a story etched into American memory. Alone, he rode through the night, warning of the British advance. But Paul was not alone. William Dawes and Samuel Prescott also rode that night, spreading the alarm. In fact, only Prescott completed the mission. Revere was captured, questioned, and released without his horse. Why then is Revere remembered? A poem, written decades later, elevated him above the others. The verse was stirring, and the nation embraced the tale. So the ride became Revere's alone. Poetry, more than truth, shaped memory. At last, we arrive at one of history's cruelest falsehoods. Catherine, the Great of Russia, powerful and accomplished, was long rumored to have died in a scandalous way involving a horse. But this was never true. Catherine died of a stroke at age 67. The rumor was born from envy, from hostility toward a woman who ruled in her own right. Catherine had modernized Russia, expanded its influence, and lived freely in ways that defied expectation. For that, detractors invented a myth meant to reduce her dignity. It is a reminder of how often powerful women have been targeted by slander, their legacies clouded by rumor. And so, as the night deepens, we have wandered through myths from apples to fiddles, from cakes to cows. Each story shows how history is not only written in facts, but in tales that people choose to remember. Some myths begin as fables, others as errors, or as deliberate slander. Yet all reveal something about the hopes, fears, and imaginations of those who told them. As you drift toward sleep, let your thoughts rest gently on this truth, that history is both memory and myth, fact and fable, woven together into the stories we carry. Sleep now peacefully, with the past settled softly around you.